Welcome back to Real Florida Magazine.
Welcome back, here today with legendary coach Bobby Knight. We find ourselves in Bozeman, Montana today. You may well ask, what are we doing in Bozeman? Well, I'll tell you what, it was a long journey. We left Florida this morning at dark 30, literally getting to the Tallahassee airport at 2 a.m. Got here about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Just had lunch with Bobby and his wife and have enjoyed so far our visit here to Bozeman. Would like to say thanks to Hampton Inn right here in Bozeman, Montana for their gracious hospitality. We're set up in their meeting area, their living room, as it were, if this were a home. And we appreciate their patience with us. We've sort of disrupted their flow today. You can see people walking behind us. This is a motel that's in business today. And again, it was a great place to meet our guest today, Bobby Knight. We'll be right back. Welcome back, here today with legendary coach Bobby Knight. We find ourselves in Bozeman, Montana today. You may well ask, what are we doing in Bozeman? Well, I'll tell you what, it was a long journey. We left Florida this morning at dark 30, literally getting to the Tallahassee airport at 2 a.m. Got here about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Just had lunch with Bobby and his wife and have enjoyed so far our visit here to Bozeman. Bobby, thanks for taking the time. You are well known even to the people that were not alive when you were in your prime and coaching, one of the winningest coaches in basketball. We could talk for hours, obviously. What is the single thing that you would tell that high school athlete, whether he's a basketball player or not? What was that one thing that that little kernel of wisdom that you could share with that guy who doesn't quite know if he's got it or not?
I think the first people you share wisdom with is mom and dad. Is there a lot of dumb mom and dads out there with kids that can play basketball, and they get caught up with the basketball part of it. And I think that it always, the kid that I looked at and recruited was a kid whose parents were tough. And this kid is going to do what we want done. And we want him first and foremost to get an education. And so one of the first things that I learned about recruiting was very simply this. It wasn't how many points he's going to score or how many games we're going to win, but I would tell you and your wife when I was recruiting your son that the one thing I'll assure you of is this boy will graduate in 4 years and he'll have an education. Now, I'm not here if I didn't think he could play basketball at our level. And if it proves that he didn't, then we can always find a place at a different level for him. But I'm telling you that this kid can play, and that's why I'm here. And I think I can take his abilities and make him the best player that he can be. And I will also insist above that he be the best student that he can be. And that's why I think I look back on it, and over a period of time, we had won more games than anybody else had for several years, and I had a goal about coaching basketball. You remember? Have you ever read about Roger Bannister and the 4-minute mile? Sure you have, because you know a lot about sports. Well, Roger Bannister to this day is the first person to run the mile in 4 minutes. And I'll always be the first coach to win 900 games. And that was my goal, to be the first to do that. And once I did that, I only lasted 91 and 92. I was ready to go fishing and shoot pheasants. So I really enjoyed that part of the game, and I go back to you're talking a little bit about the recruiting. I wanted to assure mom and dad that I'm here because I think Jimmy can play for us. If I didn't think that, I wouldn't be here. I'm not Santa Claus. I'm not here to give presents. I'm here to recruit the kids who I think are best suited to play in our program, on our basketball team. And that's all I can tell you about that. Plus, the one thing, as I mentioned a moment ago, I will guarantee you that this kid will graduate.
And you may have anticipated and asked my next question. If nothing else, you've made a perfect segue for it. Would that be, that mom-pop factor, would that be one of the major challenges that if you had to pick just one challenge that you had throughout all of your years of coaching college ball, Would that be considered one of the biggest challenges? And if not, what would be that challenge?
Well, I think there were a lot of different challenges. I think that there were a lot of schools basically that didn't follow the rules. I think there were a lot of schools that enabled parents to come to road games and one thing and another. But I always thought my mom and dad taught me that a rule was a rule. And so as much as I'd like to have helped this kid or that kid, the way I could help them was they'd get a summer job somewhere and work to earn some money. And I would try and help them academically from the standpoint of how much I insisted on academic development as well as basketball development. And I think that I always wanted, when I went in to visit with a kid, I wanted the parents to know that basketball to me was more important than education. If they thought basketball was more important than education, then they should go someplace else. But I didn't think that my job was to win the national championship or the Big Ten championship, but I thought my job was to see that we had a basketball team that was as good as I could put together in any way, shape, or form wherever I coached, but also beyond that, this kid and that kid and that kid will all finish playing basketball for me with a degree in whatever their studies were.
Throughout your career, you were known for a little bit of your temper. You were known for being a taskmaster. Is that not just the ideals that we used to embrace that we no longer? You also, in addition to those accolades, if you want to call them that, you produced stellar athletes. You produced championship teams. What do you say to your detractors or to your critics who say that you were too strict? Is there any such thing?
Well, what I said to my detractors was absolutely nothing, because I didn't give a damn what they said in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I'm coaching the team. I don't care what they think. It never bothered me what their opinions were, and they never changed what mine were. I never thought that I was to be a writer. I thought I was to be a coach. Most of those writers think they're a coach, and I could only name one or two that could have ever done it.
You always had the support of the school. To this day, every one of your past athletes, students, anybody involved in your program, your assistant coaches, all sing your praises, all, for lack of a better term, they worship you as that perfect coach who did what you did. What are your current challenges and what are your current goals? I know you're retired. I know you do a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing. How do you spend your days now besides that?
Well, my most current approach is to make my wife happy. And you know, I think if I do that, I might be husband of the year sometime, because we all have a problem making our wives as happy as we should make them. And I've got a wonderful wife, and a very, very smart wife, and a person that I enjoy immensely. And now we have a lot more time together and do a lot of things. And I've taught her how to fly fish, and she's awfully good at it. I can't get her to shoot pheasants because she's rooting for the pheasants when we go walking and hopes I miss. I tell her to go sit under the tree a little bit instead of yelling at me when I'm shooting at the pheasants. But we just have a very enjoyable time with things, and I'm really appreciative of the fact that both of us have had good health to this point, and we get a chance to enjoy things. Maybe, and once in a while Karen comes up with something that I'm shaking my head like, what the hell is this all about? And then I find out, well, that's a pretty good idea. And so we go, whatever it is, to a show or see it or whatever.
We had the fortune of spending part of today with you, got to meet your lovely wife, Karen. Couldn't agree with you more. She's a sweetheart. It's really unusual to have the length and breadth of marriage that you have and are still passionate about saying the things you say. I've enjoyed my time with you today. I've certainly would only scratch the surface, but you also had the opportunity to spend some time today with Jamie Westbrook, who's also involved for many years in the basketball sport from many different angles. What we're with your permission, what I'd like to do right now is show the clip when you guys had the opportunity to speak earlier today, and maybe come back and get some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would be glad to do that. I have, I'm aware of Jamie and what he did with basketball down in the southeast part of the country, and it wasn't just at one place, it was at several different places where he directed programs or coached, recruited, and all the things that you do in basketball. And I think he's one of those guys that was a great help to the kids that he was involved with. And like I hope that that long after I'm gone, I hope kids are still saying, well, I'm glad I got to play for Coach Knight. And I couldn't get a better reward than that. And I'm sure that Jamie feels the same way. And I'm also sure that he's got a lot of kids as they mature and get older that they can say to themselves, I'm glad that I got to play with Jamie. Boy, he was a tough son of a bitch, but I really enjoyed playing for him. Well, that's what I hope kids said about me.
And I'm sure that is the case. Let's take a quick look at that clip today. Coach Bobby Knight and Jamie Westbrook, right here in Bozeman, Montana, had the opportunity to share a few thoughts. And again, let's take a look at that right now.
Well, and I appreciate you for doing that, what you do, and that's generous of you. Even though I know they say the general, I'm going to say that's generous. So.
Well, I want you to make sure you understand this. I just didn't take you for granted on the first phone call.
That's right.
I know enough people down in southeastern United States that would know you that I gave a few calls to check and see.
Well, good.
You're not going to know who they were made to ever, and you don't need to. But I made a few calls to guys and said, now I've heard about Coach Jamie and over the years a little bit. Tell me what you thought of him as a coach and how did he deal with kids. I got nothing but A+ for you from 5 different people that I called down in the southeastern United States and was really enthused about the opportunity that you would have coming up here and I would have to get to meet you.
Yes, well, and we'll enjoy some other opportunities hunting as well. There again, I like what you stood for, and I stood for the same thing, to get an education. I helped them, and it wasn't easy getting junior college players. You had one junior college player that I saw make the basket to win a national championship for you. I was watching him right here in New Orleans. I was sitting right up there in the stand. But anyway, at any rate.
Well, I think we both wanted to win.
Doggone right.
More than anything, we both wanted to win. But we wanted to win by the rules, and we wanted to win in a way that the kids we were coaching developed an appreciation for what it took to win, how important it was to win, and they wanted to win in life. And I think both of us felt that way, and I think we're both very proud of the kids that we had an opportunity to coach over the years.
No
and does anything make you happier than phone rings and you don't know who it is, and you pick it up and you answer the phone by saying hello, and at the other end of the line you hear, Coach, this is Billy Smith. Remember I played for you? And right away, I think it always just kind of chokes me up a little bit when I hear that this is one of those kids that I was fortunate enough to coach over 40 years.
And as they improve and go on and get better or get better jobs or get a better place in life, I should say, then that's the happy part of it.
I always kind of like to tell a kid now and then, Jamie, tell me what you think. I've never hesitated to say, Jimmy, you remember when you're a sophomore and you missed those 2 free throws in the Wisconsin game, you've come a long way since then, boy. I always want to remind them of something that they're not going to get away with. But basically, the kids that you get to coach and the kids that work hard and the kids that are willing to work to graduate there isn't any greater reward outside of your own kids than having had students that belong to somebody else look back and say, hey, I'm glad I played for that coach.
Well, and I'm sure you used this as well as I did. I used it when I had brought a kid to a campus to Chipola there. First thing I did, I put him with my other players. And when I put him with those other players, I let them do the recruiting. And I didn't tell him one way, yay or nay. I let them tell him about me and what I had done for them.
You know, I bet you've had this happen to you on occasion. I've not very often, because I think that we were pretty good in our evaluation of the kid and of his abilities. But there were 2 or 3 times when I had a couple kids come to me in the recruiting process and say, Coach, I don't think we need to have that guy on our team.
I have had that.
Not very often.
I've had it.
But I always appreciated those kids that thought that there was a certain aura about our team and what they were expected to do, and they just didn't feel that that kid was worthy of being a part of that circumstance. And I loved those kids that were willing to come in and say, Coach, we don't need that guy.
Well, the late John Billups that played for Bob Webb that you had coaching.
Oh, Bobby's one of the great coaches that the Southeastern Conference has ever had.
Yeah, because he brought Ole Miss from the bottom to the top. But he recruited players for me there, and whenever they changed coaches at Ole Miss, John Billups called me. And I was coaching at South Alabama, and I went to the dormitory. You well know that wasn't the right thing to do, but what I told him when I got there probably wasn't what he wanted to hear. And I said, "You stay right here. You get your degree from right here, and you'll go far. You'll do well." And he got cut at the end with the Denver Nuggets at about 6'3" or 4, 6'4" and a half, and one of the leading rebounders in the SEC. But I told him, and I told a young man that had played at Texas Western on a National Junior College Championship team named Eugene Smart. And I told him the same thing. I said, "You stay right where you are, and you'll be better. You'll be a better man for it."
You know, I don't think that people, you know, the fans, they're only concerned about one thing, and that's winning.
That's winning. That's right.
And I don't care where the fans are or who the fans are. And you and I are right in the middle of wanting to win.
Absolutely.
And nobody would want to win. Nobody could pick out 2 guys that were more interested in winning than the 2 of us.
Right, I hate to lose.
But beyond that, there was one thing. And that was those kids leaving our team for graduation, having gotten a degree, and having made a real contribution, even if it was a substitute kid that never quite got to play in the first 5 or play a lot. But I think back to a kid that made 2 crucial free throws and that helped us win a big game. And that wasn't the only time that kid helped, but he was a come off the bench. I was a come off the bench player, and with a great group of players, I really kind of just sort of grinned and whistled on the way home when after a game I'd had one of those kids come off the bench and take over for a kid that was in foul trouble or whatever, and then he just shut that kid down, or he made 2 free throws or whatever. And those were the kids that I always tried to pat on the back. I like to say, Jimmy, if you had made those 3, he only scored 4 points in the game, and I'd say, Jimmy, if you had made 3 of those 4 free throws, we wouldn't have won this game.
And we were in the finals of the regional state, Region 8 finals to go to the national tournament, and came off the bench, had arms that dripped down about his knees. He wasn't about 6 feet, and I really didn't want to take him. I didn't think he was good enough. But his coach asked me to take him. He was low. We took him. And when he started guarding the other guy, who they had just finished giving the Region 8 Player of the Year, he shut him down so bad he couldn't even get his shot off. Not only that, he knocked every time he grabbed it and stuck it in front of him, he slapped out his hand, run out and scored two.
You know, what I used to think of and get the most kick out of that kind of a kid was that we recruit Jimmy Smith. And he's not being very heavily recruited.
That's right.
And maybe he wanted to go to this particular school, but they turned him down. And I loved it when Jimmy Smith made a big bucket against that
That's
school
right. That's
2 or
right.
3 years later, and there wasn't anything I liked better than to pat Jimmy on the ass and say, "Why don't you call that coach and tell him we just beat him tonight?"
That's right.
I used to have some fun with kids like that.
Oh yeah, oh always. Yeah, I had him. We had a kid from Miami. He played for Jake Caldwell, who you knew, Miami Jackson. And we went on the floor that very same night. We went on that floor. They were 29-0, and we had struggled for 2 prior games, but we had won. And this kid's name was Ray Shipman. You talk about seeing him later on. I'll tell this brief, quick story. But Ray, they had 2 big old kids that had played with him. And he whipped them. He whipped them on both ends. He was the Region 8 MVP. But better than that, about 4 or 5 years later, I turned the television on, and they got 48 Hours on CBS. And they have this star Dade County police officer. Guess who that was? Ray Shipman. His son was Mr. Basketball in Florida. He married a girl from right there in Mariana. And she made a man out of Ray. Sometimes I had to make a man out of him, but that happens, as you well know. But anyway, just people like that. That's the same thing you're seeing. That's our parallel.
Well, the thing that I really appreciate about coaching is that it isn't something that you forget. It isn't.
That's right.
It isn't something that you don't pay any attention to or you don't remember. I mean, here I am. I haven't. I coached for 40 years, is about what you did, and then I've got 15 or 20 years after that in, and yet I think I just say to myself, now coaching. And then I look back over and I pick out this kid and I laugh about something that we had with that kid, and another kid comes and I say, boy, did that kid play well in that game, and that's what coaching does for the coaches, I think. It gives you memories of games and wins and also losses, but more than anything else, it gives you a chance to kind of remember and silently thank the kids that played for you.
Absolutely, and they're thanking you back when they do well, and that's what I'm always been the most interested in, regardless of their ability. If they wanted to play and they wanted to not lose, I did not want to lose, and I recruited day and night sometime to keep from doing that.
Well, people would say that there would be people that would say that winning was too important to you, or winning was too important to me, that you get on. Well, you never paid any attention to that, and I never did either, because I thought that teaching kids first and foremost was how to win. How to win fairly, but damn it, how to win. Right. And nothing pleases me more than to get a note from that kid that thanks me for having had the chance to play on our team, or to say, Coach, I didn't know how much this was going to mean to me till I had to get out on my own. So you and I have been tremendously rewarded by a lot of kids over a lot of years.
Yes, we have. My high school coach told me when I was a young man, he said, they talk about a kid crying. He said, heck, I want him to cry. I want him to hate to lose. That's what I want him to do. And I tell people that all the time. They said, why would he cry? I said, dang, he hates to lose.
Oh, boy, that's...
that don't bother me to see one cry. I'm glad of it.
Didn't bother me a bit either. But I look back and I say to myself, I'm really glad that I chose to be a coach.
Yes, sir. Well, you were a good one. And I think the main thing of all in the world, that other parallel you and I have is, we had respect. And there's only three ways I know to get respect. And that's ask for it, earn it, or make them respect you. Now, if there's any other way to get it, I want to learn what it is.
Well, that approach has helped a lot of kids over a lot of years.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me that time.
Well, I want to thank you, but I don't want to ruin my heart doing it.
That's right. Well, your
I
heart,
hope yours stays okay, but I want to thank you for being here because I have really enjoyed it.
well, your heart will be fine. And when we start killing pheasants, and I outshoot you a little bit, then your heart will be fine there too. I'm a quick draw.
Well, I am sure you are, and we'll have a lot of fun doing that.
That's right.
And I want to thank you for taking the time to come up here to Montana and talk about basketball, and most of all, talk about the game with a person that I really admire for what he did for the game of basketball.
Thank you, sir.
Well, as you can see, Bobby, we certainly enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully you guys did as well. It was obvious that you had a little bit in common, and what's better than getting together with like spirits and discussing your careers. There are a couple questions remaining. We had a boatload of emails come in when we announced that we were going to be here, people wanting to ask questions. We're not going to ask some of those because I've been around you long enough to realize that unless we have 20 hours of tape here, there are certain questions we don't want to ask perhaps. But it may seem a trite question. It may seem an obvious answer. What was the single best thing, and I know there's going to be a million things, but what's the single best thing that you took away from that coaching experience? What's the single most rewarding part?
Well, I think without any reservation, not even spending any time thinking about it, it was the graduation rate that we had. I think our insistence on graduating, our insistence on being eligible consistently, put kids after college basketball, and only a small percentage of them are going to make a living off basketball. But hopefully, all of us that have ever coached have been able to make things clear enough and strong enough that kids understood that the most important thing was not winning the state championship, it was getting an education.
We agreed not to talk politics, and I'm going to adhere to that religiously. But do you feel that maybe we've gotten away from that old standard? Do you feel that we've maybe gotten away from that strict education focus? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's people look at that in a lot of different ways. I always felt that a strict teacher didn't have to necessarily be a brilliant teacher, but a brilliant teacher had to be strict. And I think that my mother was a teacher, and that's apparently, I think, how I got into teaching. And my mom was one of the smartest people I've ever known in my life. And my mom was tough. I mean, there were a lot of yardsticks that broke on my ass with my mother. I'll share that with you. But I just think that we don't give enough credit to educators across the 48 states, across the 50 states, the 60 states, whatever we're going to have. We don't give enough credit to those people that really give a lifetime to helping kids. And so what's better for a teacher to have a kid or a parent come up and say, thank you. That's as great a reward as you need to get out of teaching.
I know in your retirement, you're certainly enjoying the outdoors. You've been a lifelong outdoorsman, but now you're actually getting a chance with Karen to hunt and fish all you want to, or maybe not quite as much as you want to, but you're certainly getting a fill of it. I know Jamie's going to be coming up here, spending some time with you. With your permission, I'd like to tag along sometime, maybe get some shots of you guys out there enjoying that outdoors, and take advantage of maybe getting some of those trophy shots.
Well, we'll be glad to have you come up, and we'll do some pheasant hunting that's the best in the world, and we'll take a little run at some fishing, 3 or 4 little places I know about. And if I ever hear that you bring somebody else along with you to one of those fishing spots, I got a guy in New York City that does a lot of strange things that I always make sure he's around and available.
Your secret is safe. Thank you for your hospitality. I've already thanked your wife. Thank you so much for the time today. More importantly, time is worth more than money, and you spent a whole day with us today. We really appreciate that. I'm sure that our viewers appreciate that too. You've given us some insight into your life, your career to a certain extent. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And if you're ever in the Florida area, the Northwest Florida area, Florida Panhandle, love to have you come and enjoy what we have to offer down there.
Well, I would enjoy that very much. And I always appreciate people that are involved with how can we do things better. And you and Jamie both kind of personify that. I know in what your business, I just watch you work your camera up here. How can we get it set a little bit better? How can we adjust the volume a little better? Jamie spent a lifetime. How can we attack the zone better? How can we beat the press? And when your kids learn how to do that, they can think back to a game where we played against this team that really had a great press. But all of a sudden, in practice, coach had worked up a way to beat that press, and that's why we won. And I think kids look back to things that instead of accepting failure, let's figure out a way to defeat failure. And we find out this is going to be a tough game. Okay, then let's figure out a way to beat a tough team. And I think that's the essence in coaching, and it's why, to me, everybody looks at sports as entertainment. I look at sports from the age of about 6 to 22, graduating from college. I look at sports as being the greatest area in the world for learning about life, and for learning how to deal with life, and for learning how to improve things in life. If it weren't for sports between the age of 4 and 22 or 23, we would lose out an awful lot. We should all, and I don't care what the sport is, but sports are a tremendous ally of success.
How do you follow that? Thank you again for your time. Our guest today has been Bobby Knight, legendary basketball coach, 29 years just with Indiana. We learned today about Bobby's early start with West Point. That's going to be talk for another show, and hopefully we'll be able to follow up with just that.
Well, I want to say this, for all of you military people out there, there is nothing that I am that I take greater pride in, or that I have enjoyed more than being the basketball coach at the United States Military Academy at West Point. That is the highlight to my existence in the game of basketball. And for all you Navy people out there, I want you to know that we beat your ass every time we played you.
Again, how do you follow that? We'd like to say thanks to Hampton Inn right here in Bozeman, Montana, for their gracious hospitality. We're set up in their meeting area, their living room, as it were, if this were a home. And we appreciate their patience with us. We've sort of disrupted their flow today. You can see people walking behind us. This is a motel that's in business today. And again, it was a great place to meet right here in Bozeman. I love Bozeman. We're coming back.
Wow, Bozeman is a great city with a lot of great people. And just like these folks here, they really work to make things nice, and that's in every aspect of life in Montana. You'll not find friendlier or more hardworking people anywhere than in this state.
Our guest today has been Bobby Knight. We'll be right back.
Okay, now you got to use the West Point thing.
Oh, I'm going to use it. This is not going to see the cutting room floor. We're going to
absolutely got to use that phrase where I said we beat their ass every time we played them.
I'm going to